So let's start by setting the stage for the argument. The core question here is why our universe has this incredible order instead of just being total chaos. Now, design arguments have traditionally focused on what's called spatial order, the intricate arrangement of parts, like in a human eye. The issue is, this kind of argument is heavily challenged by the theory of evolution, not to mention all the disorder we see in the cosmos. So, Swinburne shifts the focus to something else, temporal order. This is all about the consistent regularities we see over time, the things we call the laws of nature. He argues that even a process like evolution depends on this stable, underlying order, which itself needs an explanation. Okay, this section gets into the heart of Swinburne's main thesis, his argument from the regularity of nature. Swinburne's argument kicks off with a claim about the limits of science. Think about it. Scientific explanations work by using fundamental laws to explain specific events. For example, chemistry explains a reaction by appealing to the laws of how atoms behave. But science can't really explain why those fundamental laws exist in the first place. It has to assume they're there to get anything done. So that leaves the existence of the laws themselves totally unexplained by science. To solve this, Swinburne suggests there are two main ways we can explain things. First, there's scientific explanation, which uses impersonal laws. But then there's personal explanation. This type accounts for things by referring to the intentions of a rational agent. A good example is a book. Its existence is explained by the purpose of the author who wrote it. So, Swinburne builds his argument using an analogy. First, he notes that some regularities, like our own actions, are best explained by a person's intentions. Then he argues that the laws of nature are a similar kind of regularity. So, by analogy, these laws could also have a personal explanation. And since science can't explain its own fundamental laws, and personal explanation is the only other game in town, he concludes that it must be the best explanation. This leads him to infer that a person, or a designer, is responsible for the temporal order we see in the universe. So, according to Swinburne, temporal order isn't the only clue. Turns out, our universe is also incredibly finely tuned.
The argument focuses on that the conditions that allow for life in the universe can only occur when certain fundamental physical constants are within a very narrow range. If one of many fundamental constants are off slightly, the universe would be unfit for the development of matter, astronomical structures, elemental diversity, or life for that matter. Take, for example, the critical density of the universe. In the book The Language of God, Francis Collins explains how finely tuned this is. If the critical density was off by just 1 part in 10 to the 15th power, the universe would either collapse or expand too rapid for stars to form. This degree of precision is like taking $10 trillion in pennies, painting just one red, blindfolding someone, and asking him to pick out the red penny. The odds he will pick out the red penny are 1 in 10 to the 15th power. And this is just one of many characteristics of the universe that reveals extreme fine-tuning. The greatest and most finely tuned discovery to this day is the cosmological constant. While the critical density of the universe is finely tuned to 10 to the 15th power, the cosmological constant is finely tuned to 1 part in 10 to the 120th power. Meaning if the cosmological constant was off by just 1 part in a trillion, the universe would expand too quickly or not fast enough to form stars and allow life to exist.
So you see, these cosmic numbers are balanced on a razor's edge. How are we supposed to explain that? Well, the philosopher Richard Swinburne came up with a great analogy to help us wrap our heads around it. Picture a machine that shuffles a deck. Only one combo out of trillions works. It runs once and hits it. Was that luck? Or was it set up? Swinburne's point is that our universe is just like that one perfect, life-permitting hand of cards. And because of that, its existence seems to cry out for an explanation beyond just random chance. So this way of thinking actually builds a structured argument for, a divine designer. The argument goes like this. Fine-tuning is super improbable by chance, but it's way less surprising if there's a designer. Basically, the fact that we're in that tiny life-permitting zone hints at purpose, not just random chaos. All right, so what's the major objection to Swinburne's conclusion? Well, it comes from theoretical physics, and it's called the multiverse theory. The multiverse theory hits Swinburne's argument right where it hurts. It challenges his claim that a designer is the best, or maybe even the only explanation for the fine-tuned, life-permitting laws we observe in our universe. So what is this theory? Well, it proposes that our universe isn't the only one. Instead, it's just one part of a huge, maybe even infinite collection of universes. And in this wider reality, the physical laws and constants could be totally different from one universe to the next. The multiverse offers a naturalistic alternative to a designer. If there are countless universes out there, it's pretty much a statistical certainty that some of them, just by random chance, will have the perfect combination of laws to support life. This means our existence isn't some sign of a grand purpose. We just happen to be in one of the universes where we could exist. And if you accept that explanation, well, it removes any need to infer an intelligent designer to account for all this order. Now, in response to this multiverse objection, supporters of the design argument pull out a classic philosophical tool. That tool is Occam's razor. It's a principle that says you should always prefer the simplest explanation. And simplicity, in this case, usually means making the fewest new assumptions or proposing the fewest new entities. Swinburne uses this principle to argue that theism is actually the simpler hypothesis. It only posits one new entity, God. The multiverse theory, on the other hand, posits a massive, maybe infinite number of universes that we can't even observe. So, according to Swinburne's take on simplicity, one designer is a much more economical explanation than a countless number of universes. But as you might guess, it's not that simple. The way Swinburne applies Occam's razor is up for debate, which leads to a counter-reply that questions his very definition of simplicity. This counter-argument hangs on a key philosophical distinction, the difference between a type and a token. A type is just a category of thing, like the word book. A token is an individual instance of that type, like your specific copy of that book. So if you have 1,000 books, you have 1,000 tokens, but you still only have one type of thing. Okay, so let's apply this distinction to the debate. The multiverse hypothesis adds a whole lot of tokens, more universes, but it doesn't actually add a new type of entity. We already have a universe, so it's just more of the same kind of thing. Theism, though, it only adds one token, God, but this entity is a completely new type of thing, a non-physical, supernatural mind, which is fundamentally different from anything else in the natural world. So the counter-argument concludes that Occam's razor should be about minimizing the number of ontological types we have to believe in, not just the number of tokens. And if you accept that interpretation, then the multiverse theory, which only multiplies tokens of a type we already have, is actually the simpler explanation, compared to theism, which introduces a radically new type of entity. To wrap this all up, let's take a moment to summarize the logical flow of this entire philosophical back and forth. This table gives you a clear overview of the whole dialectic. You've got the thesis, from Swinburne, temporal order points to a designer. Then you have the antithesis. The multiverse theory explains this order through chance. Swinburne replies with Occam's razor, claiming one God is simpler than many universes. And finally, the counter-reply refines Occam's razor with that type token distinction, arguing that the multiverse is actually simpler because it doesn't introduce a new kind of thing. So the whole debate really comes down to this one central, unresolved question. How should we understand the principle of simplicity? Is a better explanation one that minimizes the number of individual things, the tokens, or one that minimizes the number of fundamental kinds of things that exist, the types? Your answer to that question really determines where you land in this debate.